Good morning and welcome. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Thank you, and fade music go, lights to show go. Here comes the VOG. Please welcome the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Columbus, Ohio Mayor Andrew Ginther.
Good morning, mayors, and welcome to the 93rd Summer Meeting of the United States Conference of Mayors. I want to thank all of the mayors, city staff, sponsors, and speakers who have traveled to be with us in Tampa. Tomorrow morning, we will hear from our host mayor and dear friend, Jane Castor, who will officially welcome us to her city. Please join me now in a round of applause for Mayor Castor and her host team. They have put together an incredible conference for us. For our first speaker today, we're excited to welcome Wells Fargo's Director of State and Local Government Relations for the North Central region. Based in Minneapolis, he has served as a strategic advisor to the firm in matters related to public policy, fundraising, and outreach to employees and policymakers. Let's give a warm U.S. Conference of Mayors welcome to Bob Butterbrook to the stage. Bob, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. There's a video that I believe is going to be playing shortly that will highlight some of the work that we have done in partnership with mayors, particularly close to my heart, a project that we did in Minneapolis, where I'm based, following another dark period in our city and nation's history. I want to pause, though, and reflect on something that happened just this past weekend in my home state, when we faced the unthinkable, when a perpetrator brought violence to the homes of two state lawmakers and threatened many others. I can't believe I have to say this in this country, but there is no place for violence towards public officials. And I speak for all of us at Wells Fargo when I say that we appreciate the many sacrifices you and your families make when you step into public office. Thank you for all you do for our communities and for the country. We need leaders like you more than ever these days. Leaders like you make our communities better. And the redevelopment project that we're going to feature in this video is taking place on the site of an office where I had many meetings and a branch that I frequented. I'm so thankful for the partnership with the City of Minneapolis and with Mayor Fry that helped this site realize the full potential of what was a very dark time for our city and country. And you'll note from the example when you see this that the two key aspects that were identified in the community that were needed were affordable housing and support for small business. Wells Fargo has been a longtime supporter of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and over the past few years, we've been working with mayors across the country to highlight ways that we can together foster and grow small businesses. We have also heard the clarion call from Mayor Ginther that more needs to be done to address housing affordability across the country, and I really appreciate the mayor for elevating this issue as a pressing need with the conference. We will soon be announcing a new initiative in conjunction with the U.S. Conference of Mayors that looks at the various cost drivers of housing, and I can't wait to share more details of that with you soon. Thank you all again for your service to our communities and our country, and I look forward to a great conference with you. Thank you.
I just feel that the Twin Cities was living a little bit in a bubble, but it happened here and set off a worldwide protest.
The community was really hurting, and Wells Fargo wanted to respond. Instead of just rebuilding a branch, we wanted to help heal and grow that neighborhood.
At Project for Pride in Living, we believe how we build is just as important as what we build, and that means with community. Wells Fargo said, we want to reimagine this site. Residents wanted affordable housing, so check. 110 units will be built there.
The Community Lending and Investment Group provided $60.5 million in construction financing, a low-income housing tax credit equity investment, and a permanent loan commitment for the development of the project. This new development is the result of an engaged community outreach process that included community listening sessions.
The biggest thing residents kept saying is, we want to own something. There's going to be 4 retail spaces for small businesses to own, not lease, own.
We're seeing what a redevelopment can do to really re-engage and enliven the whole community.
And the impact here is truly remarkable. We're celebrating an important step forward.
The pillars coming up out of the ground, it's progress, it's the hope, it's the future.
This will be my first time owning my own restaurant space and be my own landlord. This project will be something that the whole community will be proud of.
Thank you, Bob and Wells Fargo, for your incredible partnership. I'm now honored to moderate an important panel on an issue that is increasingly affecting every U.S. city and consumer, the recent wave of tariffs. The Yale Budget Lab estimates that the 2025 tariffs will increase the average U.S. household's expenses by about $2,600 annually, even after accounting for changes in buying habits. These tariffs have also fueled inflation and pushed the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates high, driving up mortgage costs and making homeownership harder for many Americans. Since they were announced, the U.S. Conference of Mayors has responded quickly. We passed an emergency resolution opposing the new tariffs, hosted a Canada-Mexico-U.S. trade summit, backed federal legislation to roll them back, and worked closely with our Canadian and Mexican counterparts to protect our cities and local businesses. Mayors are leading where others are lagging. And today, you'll hear directly from a group of mayors from the U.S. and Canada who've been outspoken and active on this issue. On that note, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. First, I'd like to welcome Mayor Drew Dilkens of Windsor, Ontario. Since his election in 2014, Mayor Dilkens has leveraged his experience in economic development and international trade, including as a former trade officer at the Canadian Consulate in Detroit. Most recently, he's been a vocal opponent of the harmful effects tariffs could have on businesses and residents in Canada. and as part of the leadership of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, has worked with the U.S. government to promote balanced trade. Next, as mayor of one of America's major port cities, New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell understands the real impact trade policy has on local economies. She recently joined mayors from Canada and Mexico at the USCM North American Trade Summit and traveled to Ottawa to speak on how tariffs affect U.S. cities. With the Port of New Orleans playing a critical role in her city's economy, Mayor Cantrell continues to champion balanced trade and economic resilience. We're also pleased to be joined by the Mayor of St. John, New Brunswick. Elected in 2021, Donna Reardon brings over 30 years of community service to her leadership. As mayor of the Canadian city identified as the hardest hit by tariffs, she has become a national voice on trade, standing up for families and communities facing serious economic impacts. And last, but certainly not least, we're joined by Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett, past president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Just a few weeks ago, Mayor Barnett joined Mayor Cantrell, Mayor Dilkins on a trade panel at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference in Ottawa, and also participated in the USCM Trade Summit in April. He's hosted Canadian mayoral delegations in his own city, raising their flag in a powerful gesture of cross-border solidarity, and continues to champion strong international ties as our cities face shared trade challenges. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Barnett, and let's give a round of applause to this dynamic panel of mayors. So let's dive into round one. Mayor Dilkins, thank you for traveling here to join us from Canada. Your city of Windsor sits across the border from Rochester Hills, 30 to 40 miles, safe buffer from Mayor Barnett. And you built strong ties with your U.S. counterparts. Can you give us a brief overview of Windsor and share how tariffs have affected your city, as well as how cross-border cooperation has helped you respond?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor Ginther, and happy to be here. And to anyone in the room from Florida, congratulations on your hockey win. Let me be truly Canadian and apologize in advance. I'm going to apologize in advance because next year we're taking it back. But congratulations in 2025. Listen, Canada buys more U.S. products and goods than any other country on the planet. The U.S. buys more Canadian goods than any other country on the planet. We are inextricably linked and tied together. Windsor is really the crossroads of international trade between Canada and the United States. We're a city of about 250,000 people directly across from Detroit. We're the two cities on either side of our border, two major metropolitan areas that are as close together anywhere along that invisible line that separates our two countries. We're also home to the busiest commercial border crossing between Canada and the United States. So the Ambassador Bridge carries about $400 million a day in goods between our two countries. About 10,000 trucks cross at that border every day. Windsor is also the auto capital of Canada. And we have built an incredibly vertically integrated supply chain on both sides of the border to the extent that if Detroit lands a new auto plant or investment, we cheer in Windsor because we know it's good for us and good for business, and the same happens on the other side of the border. And so tariffs clearly have an impact. At the bottom level, or the base level that affects everyone, it's a level of uncertainty. And it affects businesses who don't want to make investments. They want to pause until there's a time when they have more certainty. It affects consumers who say, you know what, maybe I won't buy a car or spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 now until the environment becomes a little clearer. And so it has these ripple impacts that affect everyone, government, industry, families, on both sides of the border, and working together with mayors on either side of the border has been incredibly important because we both collectively recognize, all of us recognize that we have an incredible trading relationship that has been built over the course of hundreds of years, and the tariffs are bad for both sides. We've always said that a trade war is going to have casualties on both sides, and that's what we're all trying to eliminate.
Yeah, it's the uncertainty. I mean, I talked with folks last night, our business council reception, certainly in our visit to Ottawa, and at our summit in Washington. Bad policy is one thing. Uncertainty and constant change and unknowns can be such a devastating impact on businesses and their ability to invest and create jobs. Most of us are no strangers to the great city of New Orleans and its amazing and wonderful mayor, its culture, food, vibrant community. Thank you for leading on this issue, Mayor Cantrell, including your role in the USCM Trade Summit and at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities annual meeting with myself and Mayor Barnett just a few weeks ago. What insights do you take away from those gatherings, and do city-to-city relationships still matter in today's global landscape?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership and ensuring that at the end of the day, it really is about people-to-people relations. So bringing us together solidified that. We have to see ourselves in one another.
That's right.
And absolutely relative to the tariffs, it impacts all of us. And being with, I would say, my brother and sister mayors, right, in other cities across the world, they matter, and especially in Canada. The city of New Orleans, you know, we're nestled Gulf of Mexico, on the Mississippi River. We're a port city, about 160 billion exports a year, 120 billion of imports. We need one another. That's what I took away the most.
Yeah.
In terms of just our everyday quality of life, from housing to public safety to homelessness, of course, our economies, it all came front and center. But again, it's people-to-people relations. We cannot forget that at all.
Sure.
So when I got with them and they say, hey, elbows up, I say elbows up. It wakes me up in the morning to tackle what I need to do in the city of New Orleans, Canada. Our third largest trading partner for New Orleans. Our #1 international tourists come from Canada. And so this is very much front and center for the city of New Orleans, but clearly the United States of America. And I would have to say, it meant a lot to me to be in those spaces so that our brothers and sisters in Canada could see how we here in the United States, we are still tied together. We have respect and dignity for one another, and we really are in this together. So that was my greatest takeaway. So yes, relationships matter. They're the heart of everything. People-to-people relations.
It's so true, so true. And you could feel that when we were together, both at the summit with Mexican Canadian mayors in DC and as guests of the Federation in Ottawa just a few weeks ago. Mayor Reardon, thank you as well for joining us here from Canada. Your city of St. John is home to Canada's largest oil refinery and has been especially hard hit. In fact, according to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, your city is identified as the one in Canada that will experience the tariffs the hardest. Can you share a bit about your city's location, key industries, and walk us through how these tariffs are directly impacting the people you serve in your community?
Well, thank you for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. And all of a sudden, I'm a mayor of a small city in St. John, well, in the country. We have about 80,000 people in St. John. And then when the Chamber of Commerce dropped that bomb on us, you know, I was on every radio station and TV station across the country trying to explain this, deal with it, and try to figure out what does it mean for us in St. John. So we do have the largest oil refinery in the country. We produce about 325,000 barrels of oil a day, refine it, and about 90% of that is sent down to the U.S. And we also have pulp and paper there, and we have aquaculture, and that's Cook Aquaculture, who is their headquarters are there, and they ship around the world and have companies around the world. So for us, when the Chamber looked at that, they said that when they looked at the risk index, we were at 131%, and I think Calgary was just behind us, and then Windsor with like 80-some%. So there's a big gap there. They've measured that based on the GDP. We're at $81,000 per capita of going out, and behind us would be Calgary at $72,000 per capita. So it's huge for us. And what it's destabilized us so much, and we're only an hour from the Calais border, and we're used to going across all the time. We, you know, to go to the U.S. for all kinds of things. People go over for the afternoon. So, you know, it's destabilized us that way, but it's also impacted us because young people are saying, Well, the Canadian dollar's dropped again with it. So we're down to like 72.9 cents. That's huge. So young people are saying, can I buy a house? Will I have a job next year or won't I? Because it stopped big investments by some of those international companies within our country and then outside of the country as well, because everybody's sort of hovering around to see how is this going to shake down. So for young people, first-time home buyers, can I buy a house? Will I have a job? For people that are my age and are looking at retirement, it's, are my investments going to cover the costs of living for me as you know, going forward? So that's why I guess the elbows up is sort of a reaction, because how do we create resiliency now when we feel like we've sort of had the rug pulled out from underneath us to a certain extent? And our fight is not with the American public. We love the Americans. We are, like I said, we're down here all the time. But it's just the policies of how can we work together with this.
Yeah, I was really struck after our panel in Ottawa. Prime Minister Carney addressed the group and talked a lot about housing, our number one priority as a conference, and was struck by the contrast in what he is hoping to lead in Canada. But the last thing we need is for housing, fuel, and food to be more expensive for the people we serve, who have already struggled so much over these last several years since the pandemic and its aftermath. Mayor Barnett, you've attended both the Trade Summit in DC this spring and FCM annual meeting several weeks ago in Ottawa. How have tariffs impacted your community in Rochester Hills, and why have you prioritized a working relationship with Mayor Dilkens and other cross-border partners?
Yeah, thank you, President Ginther. You know, I think this, before answering that question, I think this is a wonderful snapshot of what life as a mayor is like. Because 6 months ago, none of us, either on the stage or in the audience, were thinking about our tariff policy or our tariff reaction. But it's sort of what mayors do when something happens to them or to our communities is you react and you get information, you collaborate, you go back to those relationships that you have to try to deal with the situation. For our city, I know all of you are Rochester Hills experts by now. You know, we're just across the water from Canada. We're in Metro Detroit, the heartbeat of the auto industry. And when this topic of tariffs came up, it was devastating because most of our community is somehow reliant on the auto industry, which, you know, if you look at different stats, a vehicle goes across the border both to Canada and to Mexico about 6 to 8 times before it's finally produced and purchased. And so I think, as you said, President Ginther, the real challenge has been the uncertainty. And I think about this for my community. I actually surveyed my business community because I wanted to be able to have good data as I went to tell these stories, and found out that 55% of my businesses in my city of 80,000 have completely zeroed out any capital investment for 2025. And that number hurts me because that's where innovation thrives. That's where communities grow, is in new investment. 30% of my companies are planning on laying off in 2025, and already the average is about a 25% decline in revenue over 2024. That's what makes this a Mayor Barnett issue and a Rochester Hills issue, because those numbers impact my community directly, and the relationships that we developed because of that with Mayor Dilkens and Windsor and others, I think have been really important because we find ourselves on the same side of this story, just trying to share how it's impacting our communities.
That's right. Very important. Mayor Dilkens, what do you want your counterparts here to know about how these tariffs are impacting Canadian cities, and how can we collaborate better to reduce the burden on our communities? I think one of the things we've said loud and clear is this partnership and collaboration has been remarkable in how quickly it's come together, but how important it is for us to keep that going, continuing to build momentum and broaden and deepen those relationships.
Yeah. It's a great question. Our economies are so tightly intertwined, and it's happened not in the last 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. This has gone on for more than a century. Yeah. And it would be very difficult to unscramble the egg that we are making and we have made together over that period of time. Tariffs hurt. Tariffs hurt everyone. No one will be left unscathed at the end of this. But I think it's really, really important as leaders in this room to be able to enunciate the facts of the situation. And there is a lot of information being put out that is not factual in order to make a narrative or to make an argument. And at the end of the day, I think if we just go back to the facts and we can agree that we're entitled to our own opinions, but we're not entitled to our own facts. I think that's a real good starting point, because that will tell the story of why it's important that the U.S. and Canada continue to work together at the people-to-people level, at the business-to-business level, and at the government level. We have a lot more in common, and we are much stronger together. We have proven that over the course of 2 centuries. Let's continue to work together and find a pathway that allows this trade agreement that we have, the USMCA, that the president has said is the best trade agreement ever. He negotiated it in his first term. When the prime minister was in Washington just a few weeks ago, the president again doubled down and said he loves USMCA. What the hell are we arguing about? We love it too. We've got a great trade deal. Let's fine tune and tweak any of the things that have to be fixed, but let's continue building these great economies together.
That's right. We've talked a lot about mayor's role as peacekeepers, truth tellers, implementers, and so this is another place for us to lean in and lead. Mayor Cantrell, how have recent federal tariffs affected New Orleans, and what steps is your administration taking to support local businesses feeling that strain?
Well, on the front end, it's been inflation. You know, costs have risen. It impacts, again, the everyday person, New Orleanian. In addition to that, you know, locally we bring in about 2.3 billion relative to impacts in terms of the impact. 1 in 5 jobs connected to the port as well. So meeting people where they are has been a real priority. And so looking at contracting, trying to debundle, making it easier to do business with the city. Of course, staying out there and demonstrating that collaboration is key. It's very important that I participate at this level because, again, people to people, we have to demonstrate to our residents that communication, collaboration, we really all are in this together. And so getting that message out and letting them see how connected we are, and mayors, we have to respond on the ground, you know, for our people. The tourism industry, I mentioned, number one, international tourists come from Canada. Now, we have not seen just yet a decline there, I hope not. But again, that's a part of demonstrating the relationships, the people to people, because we do not want that industry to decline, because that's the bedrock of the city of New Orleans, even the state of Louisiana. While we're diversifying our economy, that's again tied to how we import, export. It's our way of life. It's part of who we are, so it matters.
And setting that tone, making sure your city is a safe and welcoming place to all.
Absolutely.
So critical. Mayor Reardon, what role can your fellow mayors, especially here in the U.S., play in supporting St. John and Canadian cities facing these challenges?
Well, what I'll say to that is these decisions happen at this high, very high level, which is way above my pay grade. But the impacts of it trickle down to the trenches, and that's where I am. And you know, the mayors, we have a job. We're looking after our communities like we would look after a family a lot of times. You know, we try to keep things calm. We're trying to lead. We're trying to do everything so that people feel safe and secure in their communities. And so this is the first time I've been invited to this, and I'm happy to be here, but it's your 93rd time for a meeting. And you have so many mayors here, so it's wonderful. I was out to dinner last night with several mayors, and those mayors all know each other, and that's what I love about this conference. And so you as a collective group are huge, and you have an amazing voice. So I would say use your voice, speak up and speak out about this, because it impacts both of us negatively. And so what would be the strategic economic goals that we both align with? And can we work together, you know, to figure that out and get to create that pie to be a bigger piece of pie so that we can all get a bigger piece of that pie? And how do we increase our resiliency? That's more of what that reaction, again, to, you know, elbows up is because we're feeling so destabilized. So that's how we'll do it in Canada. But I think this group is a powerful group. And, you know, we have the voice of the people behind us. So I think great things can come through this.
Well, you motivate us.
Yeah.
You know, I'm dead serious.
Yeah. Well, you know, I love that point. This is not about redistribution. This is about growth and prosperity for all. So, Mayor Barnett, what'd you learn from engaging with Canadian and Mexican mayors that might help make this tariff situation more manageable for U.S. cities? Or maybe as a past president, you're in a unique position, you know, to the mayor's point, how do we leverage the power and influence of the conference to make a difference for families in Rochester Hills and cities across the country?
Yeah. I think we storytell. I think that's what we're good at, right? We know the stories of our communities, and this is a time for us to do that. I think about this, you know, I'm pretty sure General Motors and Ford and Stellantis will be okay. They have a lot of resources to get good access to folks, but I think about the people in my community who have a small business, a machining shop with maybe 20 or 30 employees, and they're trying to figure out the tariff game by reading about it in the paper. And how with any certainty can you know what your product is going to cost in 3 months, so you know what you can sell it for in 4 months in this current environment? It's really difficult. I mean, and so my job, and I think our job as mayors, is to tell those local stories, as you said, Mayor Reardon, because but for those opportunities, who's going to do it? And this is a really unique situation because New Orleans and Rochester Hills and the Canadian cities all really share this. And that's not always true in everything. By the way, Mayor Cantrell's been living elbows up long before Canada made it cool. I'll tell you that. But you know, this is a chance for us to do what we do best, to tell the stories of our communities with the trust that we have inherently as mayors, and to share it with all the levels. You're right. This is mostly, the angst on this is largely at the federal level. We love our Canadian brothers and sisters, and that's what we need to keep sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely critical. You think of all the small businesses in our cities, all the consumers who don't have lobbyists, that don't have government affairs teams. Our job as mayors is to tell their story and to talk about how tariffs are impacting families and business owners in cities across Canada and the United States. Thank you, mayors.
Thank you.
For your
Thank
engaging conversation.
Thank you.
For traveling to join us
Thank you.
here in Tampa and leading on this important issue. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Thank you. Next, we are pleased to welcome the President and Chief Executive Officer of UL Standards Engagement. He has an extensive background in public service and has led government organizations at the federal, state, and local levels. Please welcome Jeff Marunhan to the stage. Jeff?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mayor, for the introduction. Mayor Castor, thank you so much for hosting us in your great city. My name is Jeff Marunhan. I am the President and CEO of UL Standards and Engagement. We are a safety science and advocacy organization that has a 130-year history of working with communities, both here and abroad, to make them safer. At the advent of the electric age in the late 1800s, we saw the promise of exciting new technologies in homes and commercial buildings. But with that, we also saw new risks, in particular, the risk of building fires. As a result, Underwriters Laboratories was formed to help ensure that we can adopt these new technologies into our lives safely. Today, the average American household has more than 125 products that are certified to UL Standards and Engagement standards. I'd like to play just a short video that tells you a little bit more about who we are and what we do.
We are UL Standards and Engagement. We make millions of products safer for you, even if you don't realize it. We do this by developing safety standards, more than 1,700 to date. So what is a safety standard? Think of it like an instruction manual to guide the testing of products, services, and systems, so when you use them, they're safer for you. Our work and advocacy focus on the 4 areas that matter most to you. Home safety, helping to protect your home and everyone in it. Travel safety, keeping you safer from point A to point B and everywhere in between. Community safety, helping safeguard where you work, live, and thrive. And environmental safety, helping power a more sustainable future. Our work has global reach because safety shouldn't have borders. So while you may not see it, our impact touches many of the products you use and trust every day. The world is changing. So are the risks. And through our work, We're on a mission to make the world safer for you.
One of the technology areas that has become present in many of our communities is e-mobility. E-mobility bikes in particular have become an important device for commuters, also particularly important to gig workers, but they've also brought about new risks. New York City in particular saw that over a 4-year period, not only did they see a number of fatalities associated with e-mobility fires, but also upwards of $500 million of property damage as well. And as a result, they took the action to pass Local Law 39, which required that all e-mobility devices adhere to UL standards and engagement standards. As a result, they've seen a dramatic decline in property damage and, more importantly, in fatalities. A number of other cities, DC, Chicago, Denver, have taken similar steps. In fact, just recently, last month, the United States House of Representatives passed the Setting Consumer Standards for Lithium-Ion Batteries Act as a way to address this issue at the federal level. As we await the Senate to take action, I know that a number of your communities are also considering how to best approach this issue. And so my team and myself are going to be here for the duration of the conference. We have both model legislation that's available, also available on our website, ulse.org. And our team are happy to work with you to best identify the ways that you and your communities can address this important issue. So UL Standards and Engagement are proud supporters and sponsors of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We are happy to be here and look forward to continued partnership with you and your communities. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to introduce our next presentation, whose work is grappling with many of the fundamental tensions that our mayors are facing in our cities. While traditional polling often highlights a left-right divide, our next speaker's groundbreaking work reveals a more fundamental split between residents who feel heard and those who feel invisible. He'll be demonstrating how AI-powered tools can help us as mayors truly understand the needs of our communities. Please join me in a warm U.S. Conference of Mayors welcome for John Della Volpe. John?
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. We spend a lot of time in this country, myself as a pollster, looking at maps that are red and blue. But when I think about it, I think the real divide in this country today runs deeper, and it's just not left and right, red and blue. It's the divide between the heard versus the invisible. So for 25 plus years, I've been a pollster at the Institute of Politics at Harvard, listening primarily to young Americans, but not just how they vote, but how they live. Not just what they think, but the weights that every day they carry in their backpacks or on their shoulders. Because in a democracy, listening is a muscle. I think it's atrophied too much. And in too many places, it's gone unused for too long. And when we don't listen, that's when trust breaks and elections are lost. Not from disagreement, but often from too much silence. So just last week, we did what I think too few of people, at least in my business, do in this moment. We listened. So I'm going to share some examples of an exciting new application of AI. So over the course of a day and a half, end of last week, teammates and I conducted over 100 in-depth one-on-one interviews through a virtual version of myself. Okay, with residents in Boston, where I am, in New York City, Los Angeles, and here in Tampa. They weren't polls, they weren't surveys, just people talking about what life really means in this moment, right now, and the kinds of things they think about at 2 a.m. when they wake up in the middle of the night. Just some high-level takeaways. And again, this is a couple dozen or so interviews across these 4 cities. You know, Boston, of course, everyone in America, as we've heard, is concerned about housing, considerable economic stress. Of course, we're all feeling in real time. Boston, we quickly could see the additional stress that bike lanes and congestion and just the disruption of the day-to-day activities like going to the grocery store. We also heard from a woman named Mary who talked about Boston seeming to forget her. She cares about immigrants, she wants to support them, but she's asking, what about me? In LA, it's a different vibe, especially last week. This is a city, to me, when I listened to these interviews, felt fractured. Everyone was angry, but seemingly for different reasons and for different things. When we had an in-depth conversation with a man named Xavier, he talked about it feels like no one has his back. He really just needs to rely on his immediate family to deal with the stress currently. In New York, obviously there's an election happening as we speak. The noise, both the literal noise in the city and the emotional noise, is driving people to do some dangerous things, I think. We talked to a young woman who grew up in the city. Her name is Makira, who talks about, even at age 21, how worn down she is. And the only way that she can relieve her stress is by going home to smoke a little bit, she talked about. And the number of cities that I travel to, we just completed a project of 30 focus groups with young men across the country. We're hearing that self-medication more and more to deal with the stress and the anxiety. Often it comes with the divisions in our communities. In Tampa, it's a different story, and the stresses are different. They're based upon the economy. We hear through those interviews that residents here are kind of grinding every single day, hoping to access an American dream that they feel like they may not be invited to. And they're craving an opportunity to be a part of moving the city forward, to be part of a city that listens and listens with care, they said. But listen, that is data. Data is important, but what is really important, I think, are the people in this story. This is an AI interview that a better version of myself conducted with a man named Keith from the Bronx.
That sounds nice. Having some time to relax is always good. In a word or two, how would you describe what it's like to live in New York City right now?
Hectic. It's funny you mentioned this. I was just telling somebody, the main problem in New York, it's always been for me, because I've always lived here, it's prices. I mean, you guys don't realize, all over the country, what you guys pay for, just say we triple. It could be soda, it can be clothing, it can be cars, it can be insurance. It's like it's triple in New York. And that's just wear on your income, you know?
It sounds like the cost of living is really a significant issue.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a certain age. When I was young, you take a young lady out. I mean, nowadays you go out, the movie theater, you gotta get food, dinner, you go into a play or wherever you're going. I mean, you literally gotta take about $300-400 with you just to have a good night on the town.
Okay. So people like Keith and others I talked a little bit about, they're not the fringe voices, right? These are the folks at the emotional center of your cities. They're still connected. They want to stay. They want to believe. They just need someone to let them know that we hear them, to prove that we're listening, okay? And this is how I do it. So that was, you heard a version, a friend of mine said that was a persona that my wife married 30-something years ago, right? Kind, empathetic, thoughtful, patient, okay? But these are the kinds of questions that we ask, okay? Most polls, and this is, I think, to me, the difference between asking polling questions and listening. Most polls, and they should ask, do you approve or disapprove of your performance as mayors, okay? That's important to ask. I want to know what makes you feel proud to be from Boston or New York or from Tampa, okay? Most polls ask your job performance on a variety of issues, or what are the top most important issues facing the city, okay? Look at question 6 here. Thinking about your day-to-day life, would you say the city makes things easier or adds stress? If adds stress, how do you deal with it, okay? Those are the questions that the AI version of me asked. It's an open-ended interview, and it moves in whichever direction Keith or the other respondents want to take it. Again, It's about listening and not just modeling and forecasting, okay? The challenge in my space as a pollster has been this kind of listening has been really expensive. I mean, $20,000 for a focus group we conduct is expensive, and you need to obviously do more than one, obviously, okay? And we didn't have the opportunity before this moment in AI to scale conversations like this, okay? I'm excited to be part of a new venture with my friend Stephen Smith, who is here, and we've created this platform where it allows folks in City Hall and hopefully kind of throughout your administrations and your communities to engage with people like this in real time without having to fly the pollster in or to conduct expensive focus groups, which are still incredibly important, okay? But this kind of tool, AI today, allows us, okay, to have these deeper conversations with dozens, hundreds, thousands of people at once. As I said, on a Thursday afternoon, I conducted more than 100 of these. And it's built on something. It's built on 25 years of my work. All of my work virtually has been integrated into this model so it understands what works. And it's based upon the principle that we all know, that most people don't really vote just on policy. They vote on whether people feel understood, okay? And anyone on your team, as I said, can conduct a survey here, can ask it anything, can tap into a database of people from around the country, develop messaging, and test that messaging. Here's just a couple examples. And I think like the magic happens, okay, when you can ask it to speak either in my voice as a pollster, okay, or in the voice of one of your constituents, or of older voters, or of younger voters, okay? You can compare across neighborhoods, across generations, or even you can compare across cities. So here's an example of a report comparing Los Angeles to New York City, okay? The chaos and the disruption in Los Angeles is fundamentally different than what we heard in New York City at the time. There's a sense of exhaustion there, but people still felt like they were holding on. There were quotes there and a very detailed report with the emotional drivers, what's driving those things, and the key differences. The stressor in LA is anger and distrust, while New York, there was more exhaustion and a quiet disconnect, okay? And I've been testing different tools like this, applications for a year, and one of the most powerful things I find isn't just what people are saying, it's what it reveals.
I feel like, whatever the issue is on a per citizen basis, one thing that they can do is just follow up in a more direct type of manner. So like, let's say if each region was like assigned like a politician whose job is to make sure that they're completely aware of all the issues, and all they really have to do is just, send an email or two every couple of days, making sure that everything's good. And I feel like that would not take that much, resources, and it would be able to create a direct connection with the community in Tampa.
People want to help. They want to help repair the trust, and tools like this can help us understand where to begin. This is something that I like a lot, especially focused on younger people. You can ask it to develop a strategy, brainstorm some ideas. Here I asked it to generate a 30-second script for the next mayor of New York City to engage younger people in civic life. It created a 30-second PSA. To every young New Yorker, I see you, I hear the frustration, the fear, the feeling that the city isn't fighting for you. But that ends now, I hear you. I tested some of those ads last summer and the fall, and the ones generated from the insights from research like this tested #1 consistently against other creative opportunities. When we take a step back and I look at the 100+ interviews, not a large number of interviews, but when I compare them across the cities, there's another divide. The generational divide is obvious as well. And obviously this is important, especially we heard from the earlier panel today talking about young people and the stress of housing, both for younger and older generations. And that divide is obvious. But what I think we get wrong too often, conventional wisdom gets wrong, is that the divide isn't just about age. It's about fundamentally different relationships would change itself, okay? Younger people, Gen Zers, millennials, they're desperate to be part of your process to help shape what comes next. They want the opportunity to be empowered, to change things, and to have a voice in their future. Older people, like myself, not my AI version, myself, we're protective of what we've earned, okay? We seek stability, recognition, and a respect for what we came before. Both sides, especially older folks, don't feel like the other side is listening. Okay? Tools like this, in my view, can help bridge some of those divides. Okay? There is an opportunity to connect younger people with older people between what's next and what's been earned. Okay? We've heard a lot of frustration, but there's also just a tremendous amount of pride from the residents, from the voters in your communities. Okay? Charles from LA, when AI asked, when do you feel most proud to be from LA? He said, times like right now, under the stress and under the chaos, when he felt his community in Boyle Heights came together, okay? The diversity of New York City is something that Marlene has deep pride in. One of my favorite interviews, to be honest, is with Yolanda from Tampa. She goes, in the future, I asked her what she hopes for in the future of Tampa. She goes, I hope for more peace and less stress. And she goes, I love this place. And she invited my AI self to join her at some point. So I love Yolanda. So listen, to close, this isn't, I don't think, about giving you better answers. It's about being better listeners, okay? And the uncomfortable truth is that, again, people don't vote on policy. They vote on whether they feel you understand. To me, that was a lesson I pulled out of 2024. Elections are won and lost that way, okay? Based upon whether you truly believe what the other person feels like, okay? To be a young man in their 20s who may never afford a home and may never have an opportunity to provide for the family, to understand that. Or to understand someone in their 50s or 60s who doesn't recognize themselves in the neighborhood where they've been for 30 years. Okay? Trust isn't spoken, I don't think, it's earned. It's earned one conversation at a time, and it starts and it ends with listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for that great presentation. We have a number of important breakouts as noted in the agenda, so we stand adjourned until lunch. Have a great morning, everybody.